Good morning. Today is Sunday, November 30th, 2025, and this is the weekly Bitcoin price forecast. Looking at where Bitcoin went in last week and where it could potentially go in the future. So we are at the very end of November. This is the last day of the month, and it's been a pretty wild month for Bitcoin. From start to finish, we started at about 109 and we're going to end somewhere around low 90s. So that's almost a 20,000 point swing at that point. So at this point, we're looking at, was it $17,000 about $18,000 from top to bottom is what we're looking at right now. Could see a little bit more movement on Sunday, but probably not much. So I mean, we went all the way down to this 21-month moving average and then just bounced off. Went a little bit below it. I told you there was some imbalance in this area on the weekly chart that needed to be cleaned up. So we came down here, got that, and it looks like, okay, well, maybe we're at least stalling right here. I'm not going to say that we're necessarily going back up. We'll see on the lower charts if we've broken any structure, but at this point, we are kind of holding in this level to see what we'll do in December. Generally with December, it's the holiday season with Christmas and New Year's and all the other stuff, and people just generally winding down for the year. So I don't know if we'll see much activity, but I think there'll probably be some behind the scenes things going on. So let's look at what we got. So realistically, I mean, we've had a great run. It's been a good run, even if this is the end. I don't know if this is the end of this run or not. But from January of 2023 all the way up to the top, that was a 658 point swing. 658%. So that's like a 7x almost. A little over a 7x, 7.5x is what we're looking at. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty good overall. If this is the end, that was a decent run, not what everyone was expecting. We thought we'd at least get like a 10x or something, but still 700% gains in the span of what, 2 years? That's almost 3 years. We'll call it 3 years. That's not bad. I mean, especially considering what the alternative assets were. I mean, Bitcoin still absolutely outperformed everything else, including gold, during this period. So let's take a look. This is the weekly chart, and all signs are pointing down at this point. We did see a little bit of a recovery here, but again, you haven't even closed above the previous weekly candle. This is a complete inside bar showing some type of indecision. So, I mean, in my mind, that could be some type of reversal up to the upside. I don't doubt that we'll probably come back to 106, but again, it's once we get up here, is that a continuation or is that just a reversal back to the downside? In my mind, it seems that it's more of a reversal to come back down here, maybe go a little bit lower. Who knows? But we'll have to see, because right now, objectively, we are below the 21 and 50 week moving averages. So, and holding, closing, strong close below these moving averages. So historically, that's not great. You see, we haven't seen that this entire bull run, and we have to be objective here. Being objective will tell you that, hey, we got above here, and I think we'll maybe see something similar to this, to where we had this huge rundown in late 20, I guess that was early 2022, had somewhat of a pullback up to the top, and then from there on, it was just a bloodbath. Everything moving to the downside, and then just continuing into nothingness really. And then you had, you stayed in this range for weeks and weeks. So I think realistically, and again, I don't think it's going to go down this far, but a similar style move to where we see some type of recovery. Everyone thinks we're out of the waters, and then it just slams down again and kind of coming back up to this point. But you would see something to the effect of maybe like a 106 and 110, and then coming back down to maybe wherever the 200-week moving average is. I don't think you'll really go below the 200-week moving average. That is a strong claim, but maybe you'll finally make it down to like 70 something, which again is still a fantastic buying opportunity. Again, there's no real bad price to buy Bitcoin at, just because again, if you believe in the long term. If you believe in the long-term value proposition, then still, I mean, 100 is a good price, because I mean we still believe that this is going to $1 million in the next couple of years, simply because of the fact that there is scarcity in the market. So, weekly chart, that was a weekly chart. Actually, I didn't even put the drawings on. The thing about the weekly chart is, and I've talked about this. So again, we could potentially come back up here and then go back down to this level. around 73. Maybe you need a little bit more oomph to get down here, and then maybe that's the bottom. Who knows? By that time, the moving average would have gotten up to here too, which would have added another layer of support. I would think at least, right? So let's say it gets there somewhere around like February. February, maybe we do one of these and then come down. I think that's reasonable to be able to say that that's not the end of the move. So right now you play within the bounds of what you have, and right now this is looking overall downward. So let's look at the daily chart. Daily chart is absolutely bearish. So I'm looking at a couple things here. I'm looking at the fact that the 200-day moving average is above the 100-day moving, was above the 50-day moving average, which is above the 21-day moving average. So this is a fully bearish setup, one that we have not had. We've had like a partial bearish. That was kind of partial bearish to where the movement, the 200 turned red. You had a partial bearish here. There hasn't been a full almost here. Actually, you probably did in September of 2023, but that was the last time. And then before that, it was like 2022. So yeah, one thing I just look at the placement of the moving averages. So like, are they trending down? So these are trending down ever since the 17th of this month. They have been trending in a downward fashion, and that's just something that we look at, right? We're making sure that let's take a look here. That is the 200, the 50, and the 21. What I'm looking at right here is like you're bouncing off this 21, which, when you're in a downtrend, you're looking at that 21 if it's a real trend to actually bounce off. And if not, all right, well, you have maybe a retest the 100, but at the same time, you're retesting the 50. So it could go either way. It's very indecisive right now. Maybe it's a pull up to 100 and then a slam down to 75. Who knows? I'm just saying I can't get bullish until we get above about 107. And even if we do get above 107, we still got to kind of make it above 114 again. So it's going to be a trek. It will be a trek for sure to be able to see this. If they start quantitative easing they're going to stop quantitative tightening. Let's put it like that. That begins tomorrow, actually, the end of quantitative tightening, which eases the markets in general and makes, liquidity flow better. But, in these conditions, your riskiest assets in this case, even though Bitcoin, I don't consider Bitcoin risky, those are going to be sold off first, just because they do have the biggest swings in terms of percentage gains. So that's just something that you end up looking at. So what else in the daily chart? I mean, you broke this structure, so that tells me that, hey, this is bullish, and even the moving averages are below that at this point. So I'm going to be bullish I'm going to be bearish until I'm not. I will be bearish until I'm not. The 4-hour chart was still, very bearish in this regard. What was this? From, let me see, the 11th. November 10th, somewhere in there. And then it just absolutely had a rundown. And then, now we're starting to see sometimes a recovery, but I mean, this little arrow right here is showing momentum. Momentum looks like it's pointing to the downside now and it's falling. Which leads me to believe that we'll probably end up coming maybe to, again, 96 to 100K, somewhere in there. Maybe see a little bit more push up in December, but then I do think that we'll probably end up coming a little bit lower. I think we'll end up coming a little bit lower before we go anywhere else. So again, that's your 4-hour chart, but yeah, that's what we can see. Overall, I'm bearish right now until I'm not. So even with this 4-hour swing, right, we see that it got to the top of here, to this area, this previous area, and it didn't make a new high. It's now we're seeing that, all right, well, the momentum seems to be falling at this point, which leads me to believe that we'll probably see some more downside there. All right, this is the news. Not much to see. Bank of Japan. You need to pay attention to what's going on in Japan right now because the yen is it's not doing well. They're probably going to make moves in the next couple of weeks. They do have the Bank of Japan has a rate decision somewhere around the 18th. It's somewhere between the 10th and the 18th, I believe. ISM Manufacturing PMI is coming out on Monday. That's tomorrow. Nothing on Tuesday. ADP, not NFP. That is on Wednesday. ISM services, which goes with manufacturing. So we want to see a number that remains above 50 because that denotes expansion. Below 50 is contraction. So right now we see that manufacturing is contracting, and really has been since, December of 2022. So it's interesting to see. We call this the business cycle, right? So I mean, we see from, if the business cycle is expanding, then hey, that's good for all monetary conditions. But if it's contracting like this and it's remaining, low, things get tighter. So I'm looking at, all right, well, let's see where Bitcoin has come from. If Bitcoin has made a 600% gain in a time when the business cycle is contracting, I can only imagine what it'll actually end up doing once, the business cycle ends up expanding, right? So let's see, like, even from, like, 2017 was a big spike into 2018. We saw it, there was the peak here for Bitcoin. And then Bitcoin came down again. And then, into COVID, you had this huge crash. And then what happened? Bitcoin had a run up here. This is the manufacturing services and so on and so forth. So this does matter. This number matters. And the fact that, again, we've maintained such great gains over the last years in a contracting market is a good thing, regardless of what people are looking at. So, services have been expanding for the most part. They haven't really contracted, but manufacturing, that is your base. That's your base of the real economy and what people are looking at, and like what is actually being produced. So unemployment, consumer sentiment. Let's take a look at that. Consumer sentiment overall has been declining, and I think we're at some pretty low levels historically. We're at like 49%, 49 right here, which is another 49 right there. Let's see, has it been this low? We're at record low levels of consumer sentiment. People are not feeling too great about the economy right now. They're just really not. So even in August of, what was this, 2011, somewhere in here, it was still above 54, and now we're at like the 50s and whatnot. So that's not great for the overall sentiment of the economy. The last time it was this low was June of 2022, which was kind of like the bottom of things before we started doing our gradual turn up. Again, things kind of got better, and into 2024 with extra liquidity bumped into the system, but then things have just kind of fallen off since then. So. Interesting things to look at for sure with consumer sentiment, and the ISM, that's your business cycle. Your PMI, that is your business cycle to look at there. In the past, we've also talked about the Bitcoin spot ETF, and really, again, how they are an actual driver of price, and the way that they do that. So I just look at the buying trends. So what are the inflows and where are the outflows? The overall inflows are, for this past week, have been positive, and we see that has been reflected in price. Not saying that they are the cause, but it is like noteworthy that when they are buying, price tends to go up, and when they're selling, hey, guess what? Price tends to go down, even if it's only a short period of time. Hey, they sold a whole bunch here, price is going down. They were net sellers here, price went down. Net buyers here, price went up. Net buyers here, guess what? Price went up. It's a direct relationship. It is not a causal relationship, but it is very direct to see what these ETFs are doing. So again, in the past, we did not have these big buyers in the way that we do now. But when you have institutions, you are also introduced to institutionalized selling pressure. And when you do have institutionalized selling pressure, it is just much bigger. It's much bigger than you and I, than retail selling. So that's just something to watch, and we'll see if we see this start to pick up, and this is it starts going bonkers like here again. We'll see. I don't see that right now because the overall trend is down. So I mean, yeah, you might have a little bit of levity here, but again, that's a lower high than what this was. Right now, that overall trend is down, and I need to find a way to get some type of moving average on this, but we'll see to tell you whether they're net buyers or net sellers. So. Last thing I will look at is the percent of addresses in profit. Bitcoin percent addresses in profit. So let's look at old cycles. So this is going back all the way to 2011. At the bottom here of after Bitcoin had this tremendous run up from less than $1 to $23, a 20 to, I mean, probably maybe 100 something X. You came down and, at the peak, hey, everybody's in profit here, somewhere around the peak. Everybody's in profit. But then at the lows, okay, only 15% of addresses are in profit. And then, you had your gradual run up again throughout the years. And then you peak somewhere in 2014. And then, gradual decline into 2015 where 50% of the addresses were in profit. I think that went to a low of about 50, somewhere in there. Maybe it was 28. I think this was 28. Yeah, 28 was the low here. And then it ran back up to 100. What I'm looking at is these lows are getting higher. The amount of addresses that aren't in profit are just getting higher and higher. That are in profit are just getting higher and higher when you reach a low. So what I'm saying is right now, okay, so this is the low at 58%, the most previous one in September of 2023. And then it seems the lows here were about 78%. So we could see another low somewhere around like 70% ish of addresses in profit. But then once you start seeing that, all right, well, it's time to turn around. I don't think that we end up going back down to 58% again or 50%, so on and so forth. That would just be devastating to the market. And again, you do have bigger players in the game now. So it's just one of those things to see that I just don't. I'm looking at the trends, right? That's all I do is ever look at the trends and see what direction the trends are going. And when you have that, you have a pretty good foothold to be able to follow. So as I've said right now, the trend is bearish. We don't see a bottoming out period. And what you saw in these bottoming out periods was like, there was a period where it kind of fluctuated before it started going back up. And it fluctuated before it started going back up. This right now, it's still just all down. It's down right now. And even going here, like you saw that. So I'm thinking we'll probably land somewhere around 70-something% on the addresses and profit. And then we'll end up going back up. But, time will tell. We just follow the trends week to week. Actually, I'm not going to do these for too much longer. Not on a weekly basis, more on a monthly basis. But again, this would have been almost about 140 of these. I've been doing these for almost 3 years at this point. But I think it's a good time to maybe transition to monthly. But we'll see how that ends up shaking out. Again, this has been Chris Talks Crypto. Check out a crypto-based resources on christalkscrypto.com, and I will see y'all on the move. Take care. Bye-bye.